Jokes aside, let us move on to today's keynote speaker. Ruth Mayer is the chair of American Studies at the Leibniz University, Hanover. She has studied, worked, and taught at universities in Cologne, Berlin, London, and Munich, at NYU and at Dartmouth. Most recently, Ruth Mayer has commenced work on the research project Multiplication, Modernity, Mass Culture, Gender in the United States, 1910 to 1933, funded by the German Research Foundation, which will run at least until 2023, and promises to enlighten us even further on modernity, Ruth Mayer's chief field of interest. This field comprises, among other topics, of serialization, popular media aesthetics, gender, and the temporality of media in the United States, oftentimes in context with trans-Pacific exchange between the US and China. She has published extensively on these issues. Let me point out her monograph on this Chinese supervillain and the spread of the yellow peril ideology, titled Serial Fu Manchu. Along with Ruth's edited volumes, Modernities and Modernization in North America, together with Ilka Brasch, Chinatowns in a Transnational World, together with Vanessa Kühnemann, Trans-Pacific Interactions, again with Vanessa Kühnemann, or Melodrama, the Mode of Access from Early America to Hollywood, together with Frank Kelleter. I imagine that her 2004 book, Virus, Mutation einer Metapher, has recently sold some additional copies. For 2022, Brill advertises her edited volume Modernity and the Periodical Press that she edited together with Felix Brinker, a book that all of us are eagerly awaiting. Today, Ruth Mayer will speak to us on the topics of girls, 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 and yet more girls, that is to say, the transatlantic mass magazine culture of the 1920s as a gendered affair. We are very happy to have Ruth Mayer with us today, so please give her a warm welcome as she takes the virtual floor.
Thank you so much for having me and for this very kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I had a chance of listening to a lot of the presentations already, and I'm impressed by what is happening here, by the scope and the scholarship that is assembled. And also I'm a little bit nervous speaking here as somebody that is dabbling in periodical studies. So bear with me. I'm an Americanist, and my focus, the focus of my research, not only in this particular research project, but for a while now, has been on the 1910s and on the United States. And I look at the 1910s through the lens of Weimar Germany and the discourse of the critical discourse of Weimar Germany. So when I was invited to give this talk here, which with the caveat that I should focus on Europe rather than the United States, I was immediately thinking that this would give me a chance of looking also a bit at the primary material of the Weimar period, and this is what I'm going to do today. So I'm kind of reversing the gaze and look at Weimar through the lens of American discourses. I hope this will work out. I was a bit relieved when Christian was just reading the title of my talk, because quite apparently it did not immediately raise, at least in his mind, the association that rings with it, and that is of this song that people of my generation probably still know, which I think was appropriate. I mean, the multiplication of girls makes sense in the first place for what I'm going to talk about. But this particular song also makes sense because it was the score for countless dance performances and gymnastic routines that I had to do as a girl. And this, again, links directly to what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to turn to my screen now and share it with you. Get started, I guess. The magazine is a strange thing. It promises variety and novelty, but wraps up its material in structures that are pleasurably and reassuringly familiar. This characterizes the function of periodical formats such as the cover, the column, the editorial, the funnies, the photo series, or the letter to the editor. And at least in the kind of talks that I was looking at, a lot have been addressing this kind of repetitive quality of periodical organization, the uniformity, the recognizability, the familiarity as principles of organizing periodicals. But in modern periodicals, orientation does not only derive from such recurring graphical and layout cues and standard segments of orientation as you organization, as you can see it here with the example of the covers. Orientation is also generated by way of a grid of cultural references, which operate by means of spatiotemporal arrangements. The familiar is associated with proximity and the present in this logic, while the new evokes distance and the future. This technique of processing information is not unique to the modern periodical, but the modern periodical exemplifies its workings particularly well due to their specific medial affordances, as we shall see. As my point of reference today, I would like to use two striking photo-illustrated society magazines of the 1920s. On the one hand, Uhu, which appeared monthly from 1924 to 1934. And on the other hand, Die Dame, which appeared bi-monthly in a longer stretch of time from 1911 to 1943. Both were published by Ullstein and addressed similar audiences. Die Dame, a bit more elitist and kind of glamorous in its appeal than Uhu. And that's also the reason why my focus will be more on Uhu, because I'm more interested in the kind of mass cultural signals of these periodicals. And you can see that I also chose two covers here that already kind of operate to a certain extent with the figure of thought and the visual figure of multiplication. I'm also interested in both. I am interested in both of these magazines because they very obviously gesture to America, to the United States, to frame what they identify as cutting-edge trends in society, style, and design. In this logic, the United States gains both spatial and temporal significance. It figures forth a futuristic space where the contingent and confusing present and presence in Germany become readable and predictable. The thematic concern with the United States goes together with an American aesthetic, as I would argue, a journalistic style of sophisticated detachment or cool reservation that went by the term smartness in the US. Like their American counterparts, the German journals aim to reach a broad audience, which they carefully mark as anything but mainstream, sophisticated, discerning, special. So this kind of tightrope walk between, on the one hand, addressing the masses, and on the other hand, make them feel special. In my talk today, I want to investigate the ways in which this smart magazine culture of the 1920s demarcates the emerging mass medial continuum between the United States and Germany, the very sphere that Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer 20 years later would call the culture industry. In this context, America, I'm speaking America with inverted commas all the time, and I use the kind of term of the day here. Obviously, this is the United States and not the American continent. America is evoked both as a site of industrialized and serialized cultural production, and at the same time as the arena of options and alternatives to the social status quo. This is what I call, in the larger project from which this talk derives, the aesthetic of multiplication. And I pretty much rely on, on a lot that is mapped out in Adorno and Horkheimer, but put the accent more on this aspect of opening up options rather than just kind of, you know, robotic or machinic replication. So multiplication in this sense implies always both streamlining, more of the same, and pluralization, the same but slightly different. I contend that both ideas of mass cultural productivity are addressed and conceptualized in gendered terms, and the figure of the girl plays an elementary role here. And I should actually, which I won't do, you don't have to worry, I should actually pronounce girl with a German accent, girl, I think, because I really mean this kind of German idea of girlness in what I'm talking about. This girl marks an in-between cultural state that is seen as fraught with both dangers and possibilities. The figure epitomizes mass culture's omnipresence and shallowness, but also its malleability and protean character. So both sides of the divide that I addressed before. By figuring forth America on German ground, the girl also signals that Germany and the United States are no sharply distinct spheres in the 1920s. There is a flourishing transnational market of entertainment culture, traveling dance reviews, vaudeville troupes and jazz bands, silent films, and a vibrant business of literary translation, at least from English to German, which makes it increasingly difficult to maintain neatly circumscribed national boundaries in cultural meaning making. The ambivalent connotations of America are further accentuated by writers and artists who were active on both sides of the Atlantic, and by an increasingly global market of commerce and advertising. Most importantly, for my purposes, by the mid-20s, up-to-date German readers were well aware of the key players of the stylish US magazine culture. So what I'm talking about is, or what I'm trying to map out here, is also to a certain extent a virtual space that is transnational or kind of, hybrid in its constellation, in its signaling of nation. And I've had the chance this morning to listen to the talks of panel 10, especially Alice Morin's talk. And I think that what they are talking about in terms of image transfer and image traveling is pretty much what I have in mind here. Anna-Titia Leitig, who reported from New York for the Austrian Neue Freie Presse in the late 1920s in pieces jam-packed with English expressions, thus concedes that what she has to tell about a phenomenon called Girldämmerung may be no novelty, she writes, to whoever reads Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, or Vanity Fair. With this, she both authenticates her information and states her sources, and acknowledges the informed readers that may have looked at these sources themselves before. What a writer of a British newspaper proclaimed in 1927 could thus have been extended with linguistic reservations to a culturally savvy urban German scene. Quote, they talk America, think America, dream America. We have several million people, mostly women, who to all intents and purposes are temporary American citizens. America in this equation is a fantasy space, of which Berlin, in the assessment of the writer Otto Alfred Palitsch in 1928, quickly became a suburb. This in-between space increasingly merges with the space of the illustrated magazine. While mass culture operated on many levels, the illustrated magazines have been rightfully identified as seminal tools in the transnational mediation and management of cultural content. The Weimar Society magazines modeled themselves on American lifestyle magazines, such as the ones mentioned by Leitig. One could further add the New Yorker and Life, and to a certain extent also the Smart Set. And the Girl incorporates modernity as a multimodal and multifaceted configuration, much like the modern magazine itself. In what follows, I intend to show that the Girl enters the illustrated magazines not only as a subject matter, but also as a tool of self-reflection. To do so, I will first engage with the ways that the Girl transpires as a figure of multiplication in the journalistic discourse of the day at large. and then turn to the ways in which particularly female writers and photographers made use of the iconicity of the girl in the magazine, Uhu. So I stay on this somewhat broader level for a moment. The Girl and the Magazine. Writing in 1926 in Die Dame, Alfred Polgar famously pointed out that there is, strictly speaking, no girl. In a short text titled Girls, he comes to the insight that girls are a so-called plurale tantum. This means that the term appears linguistically only in the plural form. There is no one girl. However, to put girl next to girl, like the elements of an equation, does not yet constitute girls. This is only brought about by the completed addition, which fuses the singular entities into a collective. And it's interesting that he also takes recourse to a mathematical language when he talks about this phenomenon using the term addition. Multiplication is somewhat different, as we shall see, but I would like to point this out nevertheless. The exemplary manifestation for this phenomenon, as Polgar concludes, alongside many other writers of the contemporary feuilleton, was the dance review. Originating in the United States, where Florence Ziegfeld had lent a legendary form with his follies. And when Siegfried Kracauer is writing about the Tiller girls, he wrongly assumes that they are American, but he mixes them also up with the follies, I guess. On the review stage, let me get some motion in here. From the review stage, the girls had migrated to the big screen of the cinema, but it was the illustrated magazine that was most involved in rendering girls a global presence, known from the Eskimos to the Zulu Kaffirs, as Gustav Kauder put it in Uhu of 1926 in a piece titled Gold Diggers in the Pockets of Men, A Natural History of the Girl. Like Polgar, Kauder identifies the origins of the girl with the vaudeville stage, but then he insists that the still, ornamental, and replicable image in the illustrated magazine conveys this figure's image power so much better than the actual dance performance itself. Quote, 12 pairs of unendingly long bare legs, above them 12 white top hats, 12 monocles, 12 canes tucked under the arms. All of this varied 1,000-fold, and yet 1,000-fold identical repeats through all the image works of our time. The arrangement is always almost the same, but not quite. And because of its recognizability and variability, it emanates from the pages of the modern magazines into the world, until the girls are everywhere and until every young woman is a girl. And if it is students or athletes, swimmers or ice skaters, or girl groups at a costume ball, they too look like review girls, dressed, grouped, photographed in exactly the same way. Not only the orchestrated and synchronized girl clusters are everywhere in the 1920s, inscribing themselves through their image power into the ways in which young women are perceived as collective presences on the modern scene, so is the discourse on girls, which was famously propelled along by Fritz Giese and Siegfried Kracauer at around the same time. And this is my final reference to other talks. I want to give a shout out to Otto Heldhuser, who is going to address, or has addressed, temporality is difficult in these formats, has addressed this also in a different inflection in her talk that we're going to discuss this afternoon. I was really pleased. Particularly the idea of the mass ornament formulated at first in the periodical, Die Neue Frankfurter Zeitung, served to drive home the reading of the girl troupe as the epitome of streamlined industrial production and capitalist alienation. But this synchronous effectivity is not all there is to the phenomenon, as the reflections of Polgar and Kauder that go into different directions indicate. This is not only about streamlining replication, it is also about the disclosure of options and variations as productive principles of modernity. And with this in mind, I would now like to turn to the material itself in somewhat more concentration. And I titled this segment of my talk, Multimodal Girlhood. On stage and screen, the review girls fascinate because of their synchronicity and sameness. The magazines go beyond this in switching masterfully, not only between ensembles and soloists, like the review stage, or between staged performance and backstage live, like the musical film, but between different modes of observation and engagement. Displays of synchronized perfection that are all over the place in Uhu. We have these mirroring structures over and over again. Then there are presentations of stars and starlets, chorists in glamorous singularity, pulling them out of the chorus, as it were. And we have, perhaps most importantly and most interestingly for my purposes, background stories and reportages, as well as fictional enactments, caricatures, advertisements, and reviews. The illustrated magazine thus presents the theatrical and cinematic aesthetic of multiplication by way of a second-order multiplication. Girls next to girls, next to girls, next to girls. This principle of proliferation is exemplified in the use of photographs in Uhu and Didame. As illustrations, they contribute to the meaning-making of reportages and stories. In photo series and standalone displays, they signal a larger magazine aesthetic and ultimately an aesthetic of modernity. In their alternation between indexicality and iconicity, the photographs evoke modernity as a choreography of female bodies, not only on stage or screen. Every new issue of Uhu or Didame reliably features photographs of dancers, actresses, or athletes who are depicted in exotic poses, daring outfits, or self-assured physicality. And while the captions identify them as individuals, they also turn them into elements of a never-ending sequence, an ensemble of modern urban existence or performance culture, if you will. In February 1925, Uhu illustrates an article titled On Tiptoes into the Big World, from Chorus Girl to Star, with a portrait photograph of the actress Julan Johnston, captioned, "Julan Johnston, once a chorus girl, today a popular film star and partner of Douglas Fairbanks." The photograph is one of 3 illustrations for the piece, all of them showing glamorous American stars, chorus girls who made it. The text is authored by Bela Spivak, who lived at the time in Berlin together with her husband Samuel Spivak, who was the foreign correspondent for the New York World. Both of them were Americans. Bela Spivak had immigrated to the US in 1902 from Transylvania, and after her stint in Berlin, she became a successful musical librettist for Broadway and Hollywood. Her entire career illustrates the arbitrariness and transience of categories such as American and European at the time to this day. Spivak's Uhu article opens with the observation that chorus girls may all look the same, but stem from all walks of life, from little hamlets, from big cities with ever-smoking chimneys, from roaming gypsies, from immigrant ships, from the aristocracy. Mirroring their past, the future too is hazy. What will become of them? Most of them will marry, said an expert. He was an optimist and a bachelor. Most of them won't marry, said another. He was above 50. Most of them will be stuck in the chorus, said a third one. And the rest? There is no rest in the chorus. Spivak agrees and does not agree at the same time. She moves on to track the careers of girls who leave the chorus behind to become stars, but at the same time she acknowledges that they just move from one ensemble into another. Listing name after name of American and German stars that started in the chorus and then made it big, Spivak evokes a fantastic performance in unending multiplication. So right after this long list of names, she goes on. This is the first row. Behind it march uncounted lines, chorus girls who became famous. Famous as actresses on the stage or the screen, the goal and the desire of every chorus girl. And of course also of every stenographer, manicurist, milliner, and seamstress. In a strangely circular movement, this passage turns from the anonymity of the chorus to the spotlight of stardom, and back again to the anonymous masses of urban women, suspending the distinction between the star and the chorus girl, on which the notion of a career rests in the first place. Girls, all. In his piece on the girl as a global phenomenon, Gustav Kauder characterized the modern girl as an American invention, inscribed with the American idea of profitable self-making or gold digging. He debunks the claim that girls work hard to be successful as a stock formula of, quote, sentimental advertising stories for which the people, das Volk, do not fall. It's interesting. He insists on the fact that you are a girl. You are a girl. You don't work to become a girl. Elsewhere in the Ullstein periodicals, however, the idea of girlhood as work is very much confirmed. Spivak, for one, insists that fame is hard work, and this is a quote. This is echoed elsewhere in the magazine, and very much so in the contributions of female writers. Thus, in the April issue of Uhu the same year, which is titled A Day in My Life by Asta Nielsen, the UFA star depicts a backbreaking routine of self-exploitation in a vocabulary that calls to mind the alienating grid of factory work, so much more than the glamour of the screen. Now, Nielsen was not a chorist to start with, although I think she sang in a choir as a child and was discovered that way, but not in a chorus girl in the kind of a classical sense. But what she describes here calls to mind the descriptions of this kind of star life elsewhere, and that this transitionality between being a part of an ensemble and being a star. She is talking about this alienating grind of factory work, and in this machinery, fans with their unending need to tell their own stories appear as an integral part of the exhausting entertainment business. And she concludes, or it culminates in this description, new films, new crews, new directors, new people who pour out their troubles. Uninterruptedly, outfits have to be changed incessantly. The lamps are rattling, the spotlights are scorching, the saws are screaming, commandos are shouted across each other, different orchestras produce their sounds. Here, not even the star is a singularity, but part of an ensemble, or rather a machine. And indeed, if one reads this piece, one really gets worried about Asta Nielsen. I mean, she sounds like close to a breakdown, and it's no fun to be in her shoes. The emphasis on work rather than frivolous self-indulgent or mindless routine resonates through many of the articles in Uhu, although most of them do not sound quite as negative and exhausted as Nielsen's piece. Time and again, these narratives emphasize the effort required to become and function as a part of this girl force, exemplarily so in the report, I'm Becoming a Model to Finance My Studies by Hannah Helm in Uhu of January 1929. It is not only in the texts by female authors that this dimension of the life of the modern girl is highlighted, but here it is particularly frequent. Where Polgar, Kauder, Krakauer, and Giese, as different as their readings of the girl phenomenon may be, all take on the girl as an ornamental configuration of modernity. The storytelling and reporting of many female authors is differently accentuated. Particularly in the writing of the magazine's star authors, Vicky Baum, Gina Kaus, or Marie Leitner, to be a young single working woman in the modern city means to be part of a collective, but the shapes and contours of this collectivity are constantly changing and ask for unending adjustment, balance, recalibration, work. In doing so, these texts invert, as it were, the logic of the mass ornament, focusing on its production and maintenance rather than its effect. For all of these authors, male and female, the girls are a fabrication, a fantasy. Increasingly, however, the narrative focus is no longer on the product, but the producer, on the conscious crafting of careers and professional lives, on stars and performer personalities, but also on the authors, photographers, directors, and illustrators who make girls and the techniques and media which they use. This goes along with the medial self-reflexivity that is characteristic of all sorts of media of modernity, of film, the modernist novel, photography, but manifests most impressively in the multimodal medium of the modern periodical. And I revisit this once more by zooming in even more closely on one particular example, and that will be it. The last part is called Spaces of Possibility. The depiction of and the fascination with girls in the Weimar Illustrated magazine obviously engages with mass cultural processes of serialization and streamlining. But the fact that female bodies are at display is far from arbitrary. And Siegfried Kracauer's verdict of a desexing quality of the mass ornament only manages to capture one facet of a much more complex formation of social aesthetics. I would like to end with one last example that interestingly correlates a male and a female perspective, image and text, collectivity and singularity. The image story, Bildgeschichte. Lieschen Neumann wants to have a career, the illusory existence in front of the camera, which appeared in Uhu in March 1930. The format of the image story or fotonovella had been designed by the star photographer Eva, Else Neuländer-Simon, in collaboration with the Uhu editor Friedrich Kroner. And Eva's and some other photographers' image stories appeared regularly in the magazine after 1929. Lieschen Neumann combines Eva's signature photographs, mixing portrait style and fashion photography, with a poem by Erich Kästner, who had dedicated several of his ironic poems to the figure of the girl. Kästner addresses the phenomenon of the female career as a collective issue. The name Lieschen Müller appears only in the story's title. The poem itself evokes a mass phenomenon in the plural form. And I'm going to read the German text first and then an English translation that is not as nice, obviously. Es gibt da eine Sorte junge Damen, die haben nichts als etwas anzuziehen. Sie tragen reichlich parfümierte Namen und sind aus oder wollen nach Berlin. So there is a sort of young ladies who has nothing but something to wear. They bear amply perfumed names and stem from or want to move to Berlin. Eva's photographs tell a different story. They single out one glamorous girl in various poses, and she is identified and authenticated at the end of the article in parentheses. One can hardly read this. It reads, I mean, in English, for these shots, the dancer, Beatrice Garga, put herself at our disposal, stellte sich zur Verfügung. While the poem evokes the artificiality and fake quality of the girl, the pictures celebrate the figure. Even the pictures showing the girl's true misery that in the poem is very strongly contrasted with the facade. Even these pictures look glamorous. The arguably most important semantic twist in the complex play around the girl, however, is performed in the story's third image and stanza. Sie melden sich, weil es das Bild so will, bei einer Fotografin namens Eva und halten dort in 20 Lagen still und fühlen sich dabei bereits als Diva. They call upon, because the picture demands it, a photographer called Eva and hold still in 20 positions, and doing so already feel like a diva. The accompanying photographs show the girl in front of a door with the sign Eva in big letters, the actual entrance of Eva's Berlin studio. Eva herself is singled out here as a part of the collective who stands apart. She is the true star, and precisely because she is in control of the image, working invisibly behind the scenes. The poem insists on the separation between drab reality and faked glamour, associating the latter with the illustrated magazines. Sie lächeln auch aus allen Modeheften und tragen Samt und Siegel und Crêpe de Chine. The former, in contrast, is associated with street culture and urban life. So reality versus this kind of glamorous illusion. Where am I? The images, however, merge these spheres and render Berlin, as an Americanized Germany, the stage of a female story of glamorous self-fashioning. Kästner may insist on a reality, the everyday behind the image. For Eva, who we should remember created a perfumed name for herself, the two layers are too entangled to pry them apart. Her pictures, like the magazine in which they appear, create a realm of experience that amplifies the real, presenting niches for identification, imagination, and fantasy, spatial enclaves rather than temporal prospects. There is no doubt in my mind that all of this is work, the result of concerted efforts, carefully crafted performances, and rigorous routines. But like many of her female colleagues, Eva acknowledges this work rather than making fun of it, belittling it, or denigrating it as akin to prostitution. The photo essay appeared in 1930 at a time when the Weimar Republic and its culture of possibility and change was about to fall apart. Seen from this vantage point, the futures of the girl on the pages of the illustrated magazine are not temporal, but spatial, fanning out next to each other in endless variation. They display possibilities that should soon be thwarted, disappearing alongside the magazine in which they unfolded. And as a footnote, Uhu was discontinued in 1934. Erich Kästner's books were burned. Eva was murdered in the Nazi death camp Sobibor in 1942. And to come, this is the end of my talk. Don't be afraid. I'm not gonna turn this into a second talk, but it should actually be the beginning of a second talk in which one should look at how these two spaces of America and Germany then diverge again in blatant ways in the 1930s. But this is for another occasion. Thank you very much.